You think The Wizard of Oz was just a charming, colorful kids' movie? Think again. Behind the ruby slippers and yellow brick road lies a dark, twisted tale of pain, danger, and Hollywood secrets they never wanted you to know. From near-death experiences to toxic snow, what really happened behind the scenes will shock you. Here are the disturbing truths about a film that almost destroyed its own stars. Judy Garland, The Price of Playing Dorothy. She looked like the perfect all-American girl, big eyes, soft voice, and a smile that could light up a movie screen. But behind Judy Garland's sweet portrayal of Dorothy was a real-life nightmare, carefully hidden by Hollywood's golden glow. At just 16 years old, Judy was thrown into the spotlight and placed under the strict control of MGM Studios. To keep her camera ready, executives forced her onto a brutal diet of chicken broth, black coffee, and cigarettes, yes, cigarettes, to suppress her appetite. And to power through grueling 18-hour days, they gave her pills to stay awake, then different pills to sleep at night. That toxic cycle, forced on a teenager, would plant the seeds of addiction that followed her for the rest of her life. But it wasn't just her health they controlled, it was her very identity. MGM bound her chest to make her look younger, criticized her face, her body, her voice. They wanted perfection, and they squeezed it out of her. Yet despite it all, Judy delivered a performance so iconic, so pure, it would define generations. Dorothy may have been finding her way home, but Judy, she was fighting to survive. The magic of Oz came at a heartbreaking cost. Buddy Ebsen, the Tin Man who nearly died. Before Jack Haley ever swung an axe or sang about needing a heart, the Wizard of Oz had a different Tin Man, and his story is pure Hollywood horror. Buddy Ebsen, cast as the original Tin Man, was excited to bring the character to life. But after just a few days of filming, he could barely breathe. Why? The shimmering silver makeup that made the Tin Man shine on screen was pure aluminum powder, and it was killing him. With every breath, Ebsen inhaled toxic particles. His lungs filled with metal dust. He collapsed in agony, suffering severe cramps, chest pain, and respiratory failure. Doctors rushed him to the hospital, where he was placed in an oxygen tent fighting for his life. The damage was so intense he couldn't return to the set. And what did the studio do? Pause production? Reconsider safety? No. They replaced him. Just like that. Jack Haley stepped into the role with a safer makeup formula, but the scars of Ebsen's near-death experience never faded. The Tin Man may have wanted a heart, but the real tragedy is how little heart the studio showed its actors. Few fans realized that behind the shine of that silver suit was a man who almost died chasing Hollywood's idea of movie magic. Jack Haley. The second Tin Man didn't escape the curse. When Jack Haley took over the role of the Tin Man, he probably thought he was stepping into a dream role. What he got instead was a silver-coated nightmare. After Buddy Ebsen's near death from aluminum powder, MGM switched to a new aluminum paste. Safer, they said. But safer didn't mean safe. Every morning, Haley's face was slathered with thick metallic goo. Under the blazing studio lights, it hardened like cement, pulling at his skin and sealing off every pore. Breathing was difficult. Moving was worse. Then came the infection. One day, the paste seeped into his eye and it nearly blinded him. Filming had to stop while he received treatment, but there was no sympathy, no break. Just clean up, heal up, and get back into that brutal metal suit, a stiff, bruising cage that left him sore and exhausted after every take. Still, Haley smiled. He sang, he danced, he gave us one of cinema's most lovable characters, but behind the scenes, he was in constant pain. The irony? The Tin Man longed for a heart, but it was Jack Haley's real heart, his grit and endurance, that made the character unforgettable. Sometimes, behind the magic of Oz, there was real human suffering hidden beneath the glittering shine. Imagine working through an eye infection, heat exhaustion, and bruises. Would you still show up and sing? Tell us below what you would have done in Jack Haley's place. Margaret Hamilton: fire, smoke, and a witch on fire. She terrified generations as the Wicked Witch of the West, but Margaret Hamilton's performance came with real flames and real scars. During the dramatic exit scene from Munchkin Land, Hamilton was supposed to vanish in a flash of fire and smoke, but the timing was off. The trap door didn't open fast enough, the pyrotechnics exploded too soon, and in an instant, Hamilton was engulfed in flames. Her copper-based green makeup caught fire. Her costume burned. She suffered second-degree burns to her face and third-degree burns to her hands. Screaming in pain, she was rushed to the hospital and spent weeks recovering. But when she returned to set, one thing was clear: no more fire. Hamilton refused to do any more scenes involving flames. From then on, stunt doubles took her place during dangerous moments. Still, she stayed with the production, finishing the role that would cement her as one of cinema's most iconic villains. But few knew the pain behind that unforgettable cackle. Her performance was fierce, but the price she paid was real. Have you ever had to push through pain just to finish something important? Drop a 1 in the comments if Margaret Hamilton's story gives you a whole new respect for the witch behind the smoke. Betty Danko, the stunt that ended in flames. After Margaret Hamilton's terrifying burn, producers vowed she wouldn't go near fire again. But the Wizard of Oz still had one more explosive broomstick scene to film, and someone had to do it. Enter Betty Danko, Hamilton's brave stunt double. The setup seemed simple. Strap her to the Wicked Witch's broom, rig it with a smoking pipe, and fly her across the sound stage. What followed was anything but routine. Mid-flight, the pipe inside the broomstick overheated and exploded beneath her. Flames erupted violently, torching her leg and blowing the broomstick apart mid-air. Danko was hurled to the ground in a fiery blur, her screams echoing through the set. The aftermath was brutal. She spent 11 days in the hospital, underwent major skin grafts, and was left with a lifelong limp. The blast destroyed not only the broom, but any illusion that the magic of Oz came without a price. What's even more haunting? Danko, scarred and limping, came back to finish the remaining stunt work. There was no bonus, no headline, just quiet resilience. The Wicked Witch may have flown through the sky with menace, but behind the scenes, it was a woman enduring unimaginable pain who made that fantasy possible. Snowfall made of poison. The poppy field scene in The Wizard of Oz is pure movie magic. Dorothy and her friends fall asleep beneath a dreamy snowfall before Glinda's magic wind saves the day. But what audiences didn't know, and what the cast couldn't have imagined, was that the snow drifting from the sky was actually one of the deadliest substances on Earth: asbestos. In 1939, there were no safe artificial snow effects, so the studio turned to chrysotile asbestos, a fine, white, fluffy material that looked perfect on camera. Fireproof and cheap, it was used in everything from insulation to Christmas decorations, and now, as a blizzard covering Dorothy, the Scarecrow, the Tin Man, even little Toto. The cast breathed it in. It clung to their clothes, their hair, their skin. They did multiple takes, unaware that every flake carried invisible danger. At the time, no one warned them. No one stopped it. Decades later, asbestos would be directly linked to cancer, lung disease, and death. But on that soundstage, it was just movie magic. The poppy field was supposed to be a place of sleep, but the real danger wasn't in the flowers. It was in the snow that looked so beautiful and killed so quietly. Toto's broken paw, the hidden casualty of chaos. She was small, scrappy, and stole hearts with every bark. But Toto, the beloved terrier from The Wizard of Oz, wasn't spared from the danger that lurked behind the scenes. Her real name was Terry, a trained cairn terrier with nerves of steel. But during one of the film's chaotic castle scenes, where the Wicked Witch's guards stormed through with loud stomping and shouting, disaster struck. Amid the noise and confusion, one of the actors accidentally stepped on Terry's tiny paw. The crack was immediate. Her foot was broken. Production halted as she was rushed off set. For 2 weeks, Terry was out of commission, replaced by a stand-in dog for several scenes. Her trainer, Carl Spitz, took her home and nursed her back to health with the kind of care she never received from the studio. Despite the pain, Terry returned to set, performing stunts that would scare even a seasoned human actor, running through fire effects, dodging smoke, and barking on cue in total chaos. And here's the kicker. She was reportedly paid more than most of the Munchkin actors. Toto may have looked like just a sidekick, but on set, she was a true professional, injured, resilient, and unforgettable. Behind those big eyes was the beating heart of a star. The hanging Munchkin, or just a bird? For decades, the Wizard of Oz was haunted by a rumor so disturbing it became legend that one of the Munchkin actors had taken their own life, and the camera accidentally caught it on film. According to the myth, during the scene where Dorothy and her friends skip down the yellow brick road, a shadowy figure can be seen dangling in the background. Viewers watching grainy VHS tapes swore they saw a body swinging from a tree. The theory spread like wildfire. Some claimed it was covered up. Others believed it was a tragic on-set secret. But the truth? Far stranger and far more innocent. In reality, the figure wasn't a person at all. It was a large bird, likely a crane, stretching its wings. The production had borrowed exotic animals from the Los Angeles Zoo to populate the background of the enchanted forest scenes. One of those birds just happened to move at the exact wrong time, in the exact wrong place. The blurry footage, combined with years of retelling, turned a curious moment into a ghost story. But no one died. There was no hanging, just a bird caught in the middle of cinematic myth-making. Still, the rumor refuses to die, a chilling testament to how even the most magical films cast long shadows. Flying Monkeys and the Wires from Hell. On screen, the flying monkeys soared through the skies of Oz, snatching Dorothy and diving across haunted forests in a whimsical ballet of chaos. But behind the curtain, the magic turned into madness, and more than a few broken bones. To simulate flight in 1939, actors were strapped into heavy metal harnesses, suspended by thin piano wires, and yanked across massive sets. The system was experimental, dangerous, unforgiving. There were no safety protocols, no crash mats, no second chances. Wires snapped mid-air, sending performers crashing into backdrops or slamming into hard studio floors. Some were knocked unconscious, others walked away bruised, bloodied, or limping, only to be rigged up again for another take. The monkey costumes made it even worse. Bulky wings, thick makeup, and heavy masks turned already risky stunts into outright punishment. Each jump, each swing, was a gamble. Yet the production charged forward. Injuries were treated like interruptions, not red flags. All that mattered was getting the shot, no matter how many bodies hit the ground trying. In the final cut, those monkeys looked magical. But the pain it took to make them fly, that was all too real. The Cowardly Lion wore a real lion. At first glance, the Cowardly Lion's costume looks like a masterpiece of movie magic. Shaggy, golden, and wildly lifelike. But there's a reason it looked so real. It was real. Bert Lahr's iconic costume wasn't made of faux fur or fabric. It was stitched from the actual skin and mane of a real lion, sourced by MGM to create the perfect texture under the harsh Technicolor lights. The result was stunning on screen, and pure hell for the actor inside it. The suit weighed nearly 90 pounds and trapped heat like an oven. Under the studio lights, Lar was drenched in sweat within minutes. The costume soaked up moisture, became heavier, and had to be hung up to dry between takes. Sometimes production halted entirely just so it could be aired out. Every movement became a battle. Every dance, every growl, every breath, a test of endurance. Makeup artists had to carefully peel the costume off Lar at the end of the day, and crew members joked he was losing weight by the hour. And yet, despite the suffocating heat and exhausting strain, Lar's performance sparkled with charm and humor, a testament to his dedication beneath the weight of a literal beast. Behind every cowardly roar was a man enduring very real agony, all for the sake of cinematic magic. Dorothy's dress wasn't blue and white. Everyone remembers Dorothy's gingham dress, that sweet, innocent blue and white pattern fluttering down the yellow brick road. It's one of the most iconic costumes in movie history. But here's the twist. It wasn't actually blue and white. Because of the limitations of early Technicolor, certain colors didn't appear correctly on film. White often looked too bright or washed out, and blue didn't always register as vivid. So the costume designers played a clever trick on the camera. Dorothy's famous dress was actually a pale blue and soft pink checkered pattern, a carefully chosen combination that photographed as true blue and white on screen. It was a masterclass in illusion. Costume designer Adrian created multiple versions of the dress to accommodate filming needs, test shots, dance scenes, close-ups. Some featured different collars, different patterns, and subtle alterations the audience never noticed. One rare prototype had a more elaborate design and was ultimately discarded. Most viewers had no idea they were being fooled by color science. Dorothy's dress wasn't just fabric. It was an invention of light, shadow, and technical wizardry. A lie told so beautifully we still believe it to this day. The million-dollar dresses that refused to disappear. During production, several identical gingham dresses were made for Judy Garland. Backups for long shoot days, costume changes, and unpredictable wear and tear. At the time, they were just props. But decades later, those simple cotton dresses became priceless relics of Hollywood's golden age. Only a handful are known to survive, fewer than 6 confirmed, and each one is considered a national treasure. Museums fight for them. Collectors spend millions. One surfaced in the unlikeliest place, tucked away in a shoebox at a Catholic university, forgotten for nearly 40 years. When it went to auction, bidding skyrocketed. Experts estimated its worth in the hundreds of thousands, but it shattered expectations, selling for over $1.5 million. These weren't just dresses. They were time machines. Woven into the fabric were memories of a scared teenage girl, studio legends, and a film that reshaped movie history. Every stitch, every faded square of gingham, carried the weight of a story that never stopped enchanting audiences. From forgotten closets to glass display cases, Dorothy's dress traveled farther than any tornado ever could, and it still hasn't landed. The ruby slippers that shattered records. They clicked 3 times and became the most famous shoes in film history. But Dorothy's ruby slippers were more than just magical. They became the most valuable movie props ever sold. In L. Frank Baum's original book, the shoes were silver. But when MGM saw the potential of Technicolor, they made a bold decision: turn them ruby red. The result was unforgettable. Sparkling against the yellow brick road, the slippers dazzled audiences and etched themselves into pop culture forever. Several pairs were created for filming, each slightly different. Some were for dancing, others for close-ups. Over time, 5 authentic pairs were confirmed to exist. One was stolen from a museum in 2005 and recovered by the FBI more than a decade later, buried in mystery. Another sold at auction in December 2024 for a staggering $32 million, smashing every previous record. These weren't just shoes, they were relics of hope, nostalgia, and cinematic history, symbols of a world where anything felt possible. Worn by a 16-year-old girl on a soundstage painted like a dream, the ruby slippers prove that even in Hollywood, some magic is real, especially when it's worth tens of millions. A tornado made of stocking and dust. Long before CGI and digital wizardry, The Wizard of Oz delivered one of the most realistic tornadoes ever captured on film. And they did it with nothing more than fabric, dirt, and brilliant ingenuity. To create the cyclone that sweeps Dorothy's house into the land of Oz, the special effects team didn't rely on miniatures or models. Instead, they built a 35-foot muslin stocking. Yes, a giant sock-like tube shaped like a funnel cloud. One end was attached to the ceiling of a soundstage, the other anchored to a movable base on the floor. Using a hidden rig, the crew twisted, swayed, and jerked the stocking back and forth while powerful fans whipped dust into the air. They used fuller's earth, a fine, chalky substance, to simulate flying debris. Combined with clever lighting and careful camera angles, the illusion was astonishingly real. What looked like a raging, destructive force on screen was, in truth, nothing but cotton, cables, and pure creative genius. No computers, no visual effects software. Just handcrafted Hollywood magic. Even today, filmmakers study that scene as a masterclass in practical effects. In a film filled with wonder, this tornado remains one of the most incredible tricks ever pulled off, with little more than imagination and grit. 4 directors, 1 film, and a lot of chaos. The Wizard of Oz may look like a seamless fairy tale on screen, but behind the scenes, it was a revolving door of chaos. In a production plagued by uncertainty, it took 4 different directors to bring Oz to life, each leaving their fingerprint and each nearly derailing the dream. First came Norman Taurog, who shot initial tests with Judy Garland. But his vision didn't click with the studio's expectations, and he was swiftly replaced. Richard Thorpe stepped in, giving Dorothy a blonde wig, heavy makeup, and a glamorized look that MGM later rejected entirely. His footage made Judy look like a doll, not the innocent Kansas girl they needed. After 2 weeks, Thorpe was fired. Then came George Cukor, not to shoot, but to strip away the Hollywood gloss. He ditched the wig, softened Judy's appearance, and guided her toward a more natural performance. The Dorothy we know today? That was Cukor's doing. But it was Victor Fleming who finally took command, directing most of the film and shaping its iconic tone. Ironically, right before the film wrapped, Fleming was pulled away to direct Gone with the Wind, and King Vidor stepped in to shoot the sepia-toned Kansas scenes. Quiet, emotional moments that bookend the fantasy. In the end, it took a patchwork of visions, egos, and last-minute pivots to create one of cinema's greatest stories, a miracle stitched together with creative chaos. The reshoot that changed Dorothy and movie history. When early footage of The Wizard of Oz was reviewed, MGM executives knew something was wrong. Dorothy, as played by Judy Garland, didn't feel like Dorothy. She looked too polished, too artificial, more like a Hollywood starlet than a small-town Kansas girl. It wasn't Garland's fault. It was the studio's. Under director Richard Thorpe's early vision, Judy wore a blonde wig, heavy makeup, and thick lashes. She moved stiffly. She looked glamorous, not innocent. A far cry from the wide-eyed girl lost in a magical land. Then came George Cukor. He didn't direct for long, but in just a few days he changed everything. He removed the wig, stripped away the makeup, and told Garland to play the role as herself, vulnerable, sweet, and real. He encouraged her to bring out her natural charm, her youth, her sincerity. The transformation was immediate. MGM ordered reshoots, scrapping Thorpe's footage and starting over. With this new version of Dorothy, authentic, emotionally grounded, and human, Garland found the heartbeat of the film. Without that intervention, we may never have believed in Oz the way we do. Dorothy's journey wasn't just about finding home, it was about becoming someone the world would never forget. The Scarecrow's mask left real scars. Ray Bolger brought warmth, humor, and unmatched physicality to the role of the Scarecrow, a character so full of life, it's easy to forget just how much pain was hidden beneath that floppy hat and stitched-on smile. But Bolger paid dearly for that iconic look. The Scarecrow's mask wasn't a simple costume piece. It was a full-face prosthetic, molded from thick rubber and glued tightly to his skin. It restricted his movement and left little room to breathe. Under the intense studio lights, the glue would melt and re-adhere, making it nearly impossible to remove without tearing flesh. Every day when the mask came off, it left red welts, raw skin, and sometimes even open sores. The burlap-like makeup around his eyes itched constantly, and the heat trapped beneath the mask caused relentless sweating and discomfort. But Bolger danced through it all, twisting, leaping, and tumbling with a fluidity that made the Scarecrow one of Oz's most lovable and enduring characters. For weeks after filming wrapped, the contours of the mask were still imprinted on Bolger's face. His performance was light as straw, but it was carved from grit, discipline, and real physical sacrifice. In a land made of dreams, Bolger's pain became part of the magic. The Munchkins who found family in Oz. They were called Munchkins on screen, cheerful, colorful, and quirky. But behind the scenes, the 124 little people cast in The Wizard of Oz faced a reality far more complex than what audiences saw. Many of them had never worked in film before. They came from around the world, drawn by rare opportunity in an industry that often gave them none. Once on set, they were crammed into long days, bulky costumes, and chaotic schedules. Language barriers, limited support, and a sense of being sidelined from the main cast made their experience isolating at times. But something unexpected happened. In the midst of all the confusion, a community began to form. These performers, thrown together in a surreal Hollywood whirlwind, began to bond, laughing between takes, supporting one another through the exhaustion. Some even found love. A few couples who met during production went on to marry, their stories forever tied to the yellow brick road. After the film, many stayed in touch, forming lifelong friendships and eventually advocacy groups for the rights and representation of little people in entertainment. Oz gave them more than screen time. It gave them a shared story, a sense of belonging, and for some, a new beginning. Behind the candy-colored set pieces were real lives, real struggles, and real connection. The voice that refused to disappear. Buddy Ebsen never got to appear as the Tin Man. After collapsing from toxic aluminum powder and nearly dying, he was replaced by Jack Haley, his scenes reshot, his face erased from the film. But there's one thing the studio couldn't completely remove: his voice. Before Ebsen was hospitalized, he had already recorded several musical numbers for the film. And when MGM recast the role, they quietly decided to keep his vocals in some group songs, blending them into the final soundtrack. So when Dorothy and her companions sing "We're Off to See the Wizard," you're not just hearing Haley, you're hearing Ebsen too, layered into the harmony like a ghost hiding in the melody. Most audiences never noticed. There were no credits, no announcements, just a disembodied voice echoing through one of the most joyful moments in cinematic history, belonging to a man who was nearly killed by the very role that made him part of it. It's a strange legacy, a performance that exists only in sound, buried beneath the music of Oz. Buddy Ebsen may have vanished from the screen, but he left something behind, a haunting trace of what might have been, carried on in every chorus that skips down the yellow brick road. The classic that nearly failed. Today, The Wizard of Oz is one of the most beloved films of all time, a cultural cornerstone, endlessly quoted, parodied, and celebrated. But when it first hit theaters in 1939, it almost disappeared into history. The production had been one of the most expensive ever attempted by MGM. Lavish sets, experimental special effects, a massive cast, and multiple directors sent costs soaring. When the movie premiered, reviews were positive, but box office numbers weren't. It barely broke even. Studio executives were nervous. Audiences, it seemed, weren't ready to follow the yellow brick road. But something unexpected happened a decade later. In 1949, MGM re-released the film, and this time, it resonated. Then came the television broadcasts in the 1950s, which brought Oz into American living rooms. For the first time, children could watch it every year. Families gathered around the TV. A new generation discovered the magic, not in theaters but at home. Suddenly, the film that nearly vanished became immortal. It won Oscars. It inspired generations. It transformed Judy Garland into a legend. And behind its timeless glow, it carried the scars, sacrifices, and silent heroes who gave everything to make it real. The road to Oz was far from golden, but somehow it still led home.